Now, Sports Talk with Brodes. Here's Hunter Brody.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome on into Sports Talk with Brodes. I'm very excited for this conversation today. I want to break apart a piece written on The Athletic by Rich Hoffman that discussed this Sixers-Cleveland Cavaliers game a little bit further, and it has a more broad approach to where this team is at this point of the season. And of course, I want to take more of your phone calls when you reacted to that loss, that brutal loss to Cleveland at the Wells Fargo Center. This team does not lose normally in South Philadelphia, but that was a tough one, a really hard one to swallow, and it should have kept them up at night because they had an opportunity to manhandle that team. Not only that, they had an opportunity to squeak out of there with the win. They had a chance to hit the game-winning shot, and they had the lead late in the fourth quarter, and they let it evaporate. They let it slip. Even if they won ugly, fine. We can nitpick them to death, but they still would have won the game. It would have been an uglier win, but they would have won the game. They weren't able to do that. And I think where we begin today, I highlighted 3 sections of this piece on The Athletic, and we'll kind of break them down. I'll share it, and then I'll give my opinion. I'll share another part of it, and then I'll give my opinion. I'll share a third part of it, and then I will give you my opinion. So let's start off here. I'll read you this portion. The Sixers have not executed well against a set defense all season. Cleaning the glass has a metric that estimates how many points a team scores per 100 half-court plays. On the season, the Sixers ranked 23rd in this statistic, with 94.1 points per 100 half-court plays. The other 2 teams at the top of the Eastern Conference, Brooklyn and Milwaukee, rank 1st and 4th. This is a concerning stat as the game doesn't speed up in the playoffs. Some of the Sixers' poor half-court offense comes down to how the lineups have been staggered. As you might suspect, the Sixers score at a healthier clip in the half-court when Embiid plays. When he doesn't, the half-court offense has been a train wreck. So, there is some context to throw in here. We have seen Joel Embiid sit out a couple games, and when that has happened, the Sixers have not had a ton of success, which does play a role in where the numbers are right now. But still, even with that context, there is an issue with the half-court set game. And we have been complaining about Ben Simmons to this point because there is an area of his game that isn't where it needs to be that hurts this specific situation that we are displaying right now. And it really does put it in perspective when you see the Milwaukee Bucks and when you see the Brooklyn Nets be super efficient and at the top of the league in this area. I know I stress about it, and I get it. It could be annoying, and it can irritate you that when I break down game by game by game what happens with this team, I constantly bring up, well, basketball in May and June is different. And when you start seeing postseason teams and when games matter more, what you see in the regular season of flying up and down the court and playing at this fast pace, it doesn't happen. It's irrelevant. Teams play a different style. You lock in to a different level of intensity, which changes the whole dynamic of the sport. And it is a reality. So while you have this open court philosophy when you're playing some of these teams in November, December, January, February, March, that doesn't correlate to what happens when people put the straps down on you. And oh, by the way, they have elite scoring as well. So seeing these stats and seeing what cleaning the glass gives you as a metric, I think this actually makes me more nervous than I was. I already have been claiming that this team is hanging around one of the best in the Eastern Conference. And I still do believe that. I think, once again, it tells you more about the state of the Eastern Conference, more so than it does how powerful this Philadelphia 76ers team is. I think they're in the mix. Why? Well, because there's no team that really runs away with it. There was a point, let's say a week ago or so, where they had a worse record than where they were last year. And at that point last year, they were a 5th or 6th seed. This year, they had a worse record and they were 1st seed in the East. Because last year, you had a different vibe in the Eastern Conference. You had different production. You had different teams in different areas. You had Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat playing differently. Although it seems like they are turning the corner and becoming a better version of themselves. And same with the Raptors. They were a better version last year. Although their slow start is now starting to become the outlier, and they're playing better basketball, although they did go through a little bit of a tougher stretch as of late since seeing Philadelphia. But ultimately, they're turning the page and finding themselves a bit more than they started out the season doing. Who knows what happens with Kyle Lowry and how that changes the dynamic of their franchise. But now, you have the Sixers hanging around the top. But there is this huge fear of mine that they are not going to be able to run this fantastic offense that we see through stretches, wide open looks and getting these three-point shots. I don't know if that's going to be as fluid when you need it to be fluid. The fact that Milwaukee and Brooklyn, first and fourth, and here you are, 23rd in the league, that's brutal. That's bad. And a lot of that has to do with, Ben Simmons. That has been a problem since he has gotten into the league. And it has to do with other guys too. It's not just one man, but one man's flaw is very big. It's a very big part of it. Now let's move on. But it also feels like they are leaving points on the table when Embiid is in the game. Take Saturday's matchup against Cleveland. Embiid didn't have his best touch from mid-range, but he still managed an efficient 42 points. Jared Allen is a quality NBA center, but as Embiid pointed out after one of his late-game dunks, he just isn't big enough to handle the Sixers center one-on-one. But it doesn't feel like the rest of the Sixers are doing enough damage when an Embiid double team puts them in an advantageous position. So Embiid is going to get swarmed at this point. You're not going to see teams let him operate when he wants to. Oh, you want to face up? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, face up, Embiid. We will allow you to do whatever you want to do. Teams are going to be smarter than that. And even if a dumpster fire organization with a bum squad that has no good players on it decides to allow for that to happen, well, whoop-de-damn-do. You might get a regular season win and then you move on from there. I keep looking big picture because big picture matters to me significantly more. Joel Embiid is going to get crushed with double teams, triple teams from so many different spots on the floor. He's not going to know what to do. The Cavs brought it to him late in that fourth quarter. He's trying to hit Danny Green and the ball goes past the half court line and goes out of bounds. So he's going to get flustered and it's going to cause some damage. You are going to need some of these players to step up. Now the Sixers didn't have Tobias Harris. And yes, Tobias Harris is a crucial part to this team. I like to look back at what happened to the Los Angeles Lakers over this recent stretch of not having Anthony Davis and Schroeder. What happened? Well, LeBron James couldn't carry the squad that long. They fell apart and they had a tough time. Now, the difference is, how I would relate this would be, imagine if the Lakers had Anthony Davis and LeBron but didn't have Schroeder. They would still be able to win games. Having Ben Simmons and having Joel Embiid, not having Tobias Harris is somewhat similar. I'm not saying it's exactly the same, but it has that same sense surrounding it. So they should still be able to beat up on a Cleveland team. It's not like their opponent was better than average. No, this Cavs team struggle. They have a lot of young players, and they just allowed them to, make a lot of plays in transition after turnovers and get to the paint and get to the rack whenever they wanted to. You allowed them to take the lead, and then you had to play catch-up the whole time. You eventually did catch up, but that's not something that's sustainable and you can rely on all the time, no matter who the opponent is. Oh yeah, we'll fight back when we want to. No! And I mentioned Doc Rivers after the game in the post-game pod. Well, I'm going to bring it up again. He felt as if they couldn't do a damn thing running their offense. Well, that comes down to part of the biggest issue with this team in the half court. And if you can't do it against the stinking Cleveland Cavaliers, explain to me how you're going to do it against Milwaukee or the Brooklyn Nets or anybody else that you might see in the postseason. If you can't do it against Colin Sexton and Garland, come on, really? That scares me. It really does concern me. Now on to the third point. The Sixers still ranked 28th in three-point frequency. And bringing in Green and Curry, Daryl Morey was determined to get more shooting around Embiid and Simmons. But the idealized version of a bombs-away attack from the three-point arc around the two All-Stars has not come to fruition. Curry, again, is a good example. While he is shooting an excellent 47% from deep on the season, only 45% of his shots are from behind the arc. Curry's lack of size and release limit him in some regards, but Curry allows himself to get run off the line way too easily. There was a big knock on what Brett Brown did last year because, well, we were sold bully ball, and then by halfway through the season, it was no longer bully ball, and people didn't like that. And the roster wasn't built, realistically, to be this three-point shooting team, but they decided to take a lot of threes, and that pissed people off. That's how the NBA works. Now, I'm going to go right now to the 2019-20 NBA three-point shooting by team, just so we can kind of compare it to what they did last year and what they are doing this year. All right, so make sure this is this year's season. Let's go back to last year. I'm going to pull this screen over here just because it's a little bit closer to my face. The Philadelphia 76ers last season would shoot how many attempts per game? Three-pointer attempts per game. They were, if this is, well, yeah, I'm going to count here on air. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. 22nd in the league with 31.63 attempts per game. Okay? So now let's look at where they are at this point. So you look at three-point attempts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28th in the league at 29 per game. They're shooting less this season than they were last season, and they have now a more better constructed roster to shoot the threes. That is a problem with the identity of this team. Now, there's two ways to look at it. Oh, Brett is such an idiot. Why would he have a team that doesn't have a lot of three-point shooters shooting more threes? Well, because it's the NBA. It's how this league works. You won't be able to keep up with all of the lethal scoring if you are not popping a lot of threes. You have to. You might not like it. It might not be the style of play that you enjoy, but it is where today's game is. And to have a roster built the way that you do, to only have 29 attempts per game, that's a problem. Now, here's a little bit of a bounce back or a counter argument, I should say. The Lakers take 30. The Spurs take 30. But they have LeBron James. Okay? I'll take those numbers if I have LeBron James. We don't have that luxury. And we're also having half-court set problems. And we don't have one of the greatest to ever do it. So I'll take those numbers if I have LeBron James on my team. But the fact that you don't, I don't know how you win basketball games. This is all concerning me. And it's not so much the loss last night. I don't look at the loss last night and then, I'm going to change how I feel now because of that one game. But now that there's a big enough sample size, you have seen this team compete against great opponents, bad opponents, average opponents, and you've seen their record, and you see where they stand in the Eastern Conference. It's more of, let's take all of the data, let's take all of the information, let's apply it to where other teams are in this league, and now I'm starting to get concerned. You know, with the eye test, it doesn't look as bad until you start really looking at these numbers and you can see some of the problems that continue to linger no matter if they win or lose, no matter if it's a blowout or not a blowout. Like sometimes there are these lingering issues that you see, and once you start getting into the data and the information and you apply it to what else is going down with some of these other squads, it definitely puts it all into perspective. And I am now in an area where, maybe I don't feel as confident as I once did. because all of these problems that are happening now are only going to be under the magnifying glass later on. And these problems that you need to figure out now that aren't working, that's what wins you basketball games in the playoffs. Executing in the half-court set wins you playoff games. It wins you playoff series. Honestly, it's the most important thing in the world. And they aren't good at it. Is Joel Embiid going to be able to carry you to 45 points a night? No. Why? Because teams are going to bring the house on him. 2, 3 guys, take away all the time and space in the world, and teams are going to force you to beat them in other ways. So then you're going to have to rely on this three-point shooting team, or these three-point shooting guys that don't shoot a lot, that don't shoot enough, and they're very up and down, and that's what you're going to need to rely on to beat you in a playoff series? Not feeling good. I'm definitely not feeling good. But what is good is DraftKings Sportsbook. UFC 259 is this weekend and is sure to be action-packed with 3 title fights taking place in one night. DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of UFC, is putting you in the center of this weekend's title fight with 100-1 odds on either fighter to land a punch during the title fight. Pick either main event fighter to land a punch during this weekend's UFC 259 bout, and DraftKings Sportsbook will give you 100-1 odds. Just bet $1 on either fighter to land a punch, and if that happens, you cash $100. Download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code BRODES when you sign up to turn $1 into $100 if either main event fighter lands a punch on Saturday. Place your bet and watch the fist fly this weekend. That's code BRODES to turn $1 into $100 if either fighter lands a punch for a limited time. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older. Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Restrictions apply in partnership with Meadows Racetrack and Casino. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, let's go to the Anytime Hotline to hear what you had to say after this brutal loss.
Wow, what a game. I think this was one of the best games where I've seen Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons play together. Ben Simmons hit that late 3. It's just crazy. Joel Embiid tried taking over overtime. I think he kind of stepped up a little bit too late, and I think they probably should try to feed him the ball a little bit more in crunch time. But nonetheless, Tobias Harris, very valuable to this team. Sucks that he didn't play. It's also weird because this team usually isn't missing Tobias Harris. He's usually an Iron Man. So seeing this team try and function without him was interesting. Ben Simmons was aggressive, and crunch time kind of disappeared. Nobody could hit a damn shot, and Jesus, for a veteran, Danny Green makes some dumb-ass plays. Bench continues to be bad. I think Doc Rivers probably should have pulled him a bit earlier than he did, but tough loss. That was a fun game, though.
Oh, wow. He looked at it as a fun game. I looked at it as a frustrating game. I've seen fun games that maybe they lost, but you had entertainment. This was not that for me, so kudos for you for seeing some sort of enjoyment there. I didn't. I thought it was miserable. The first quarter was bad. When we found out it was going to overtime, I was so disappointed. People say free basketball. Free basketball? I want to be blind. I don't want to have eyes anymore. I don't want to watch anything close to that basketball ever again. That's how much I thought the defense was getting ripped apart, and the turnovers, Ben Simmons with 7. Now, look, you mentioned that they both had big games, and to an extent they did, and everyone says that they can't play together. Well, that's foolish. They could play together, and there were stretches where they did have good, strong moments together. I just hated Ben late, and I hated the fact that Ben, don't give me this nonsense three-point garbage. I don't put any value into that, and the fact that people do, quite frankly, pisses me off. Do you think that would have happened if there wasn't any other circumstance other than the game was ending and he just randomly decided to pull up just because he wanted to? That would have never happened in a real moment, in a real game. Like, the game was over. It's similar to throwing up a half-court heave just because all the time's running out. There is no significance in that shot at all, so I'm not even going to go there. Ben Simmons had 1 point outside of that 3 after the third quarter. And I know that Doc Rivers went with that bench for a little bit deeper into the fourth quarter and all. But you had the rest of the fourth quarter and overtime, and my man ends up getting fouled one time and hitting 1 of 2 in that fourth quarter. I'm sorry. You have to be stronger than that. I couldn't stand it. I do agree with you, though, that Joel Embiid didn't get the ball until a certain amount of time left in the game. Well, they were running action for Seth Curry. Why are we running action for Seth Curry? He was the worst guy on the court. So that needed to be looked at and needed to be adjusted. You thought when he needed to score, going to your coldest player was best? And look, I'm not saying that the play was 100% specifically ran just for that guy. There's plenty of times where there's 2, 3, 4 options based off of a play. And when the play plays out, naturally, someone's going to get the ball, and maybe it ends up being Seth Curry. But I remember specifically one of those, it came out of a TV timeout. So that means there was thought into, all right, Seth Curry and him with the two-man game with Joel Embiid. That one screamed to me, at least, and I could go back and I wish I had the opportunity to ask Doc Rivers that question, but it did look like, at least from the first initial reaction, that out of a TV timeout, Seth Curry's putting up a shot. He didn't make it, may I add. Well, you're definitely thinking of Seth Curry getting that shot if that's how it played out that easily out of a TV timeout.
What's up, Brodes? What's going on? Anwar from South Philly. I don't know why the Cavs have our number and then they make it difficult for us. But, it's definitely a game that could have been won. At the end of the game, before overtime, I wish it could have been a down low play, like with better odds than Embiid getting double team taking a shot. But we talked about this once before, and there's plenty of times Ben Simmons either got to that corner, top left for the three, and had the opportunity to flip the switch, drive, take it to the basket. So many times when he had a smaller person on him. Why does he decide to flip the switch when he wants to? And if Embiid goes for 40 plus, then you should be going for 30.
I don't disagree with you there. That would be nice, a 40 and 30 night. Yeah, the Ben thing, and that's why it's irritating. Because if he wants to, he can, and no one can stop him. But when he doesn't want to, it's frustrating. And I remember he had a mismatch. And I forget exactly who was on him. But I remember Allah's voice. Because it was baseline. And before Ben initiated any sort of aggressiveness, Allah screaming on the broadcast, "Take him, Ben! Take him, Ben! Take him, Ben!" And he did. He did. He went at him and he attacked baseline. But instead of going up and trying to get to the rim and maybe getting fouled, he kicked it out and it was a brutal pass to Joel Embiid. And then Allah tries and cover it up by saying, "Oh, well, that was the right mindset of it." And, that's Ben trying to kick it out for his teammates. Dude, you have a guy on you that you should annihilate. Why is kicking out to Joel Embiid at the top of the three your thought process there? Why isn't it destroy the opponent standing in front of you that you have significant amount of size on and you could obliterate if you just put your shoulder into his chest and deliver with a big-time slam? But no, you want to kick it out. You're driving baseline. You're an inch away from the basket, and you think throwing the ball out to an Embiid, which, it wasn't even that wide open, and it wasn't a good pass either. That is what crushes me inside. Now, you did mention the final play. I really don't have a problem with Embiid taking that shot. Joel Embiid has been magnificent from the mid-range all year long, and he just missed it. He just missed it. Now, there was help coming over, so Jared Allen did have some help there. Unfortunate. I'm not going to yell at the coach for not drawing up a better play. I was totally 100% cool with what Doc Rivers did. He put the ball in the best player's hands. If he went to Seth Curry or if he went to Furkan, we could be having a different discussion. But to ask, if you said to me right now, tomorrow's game or Monday's game comes down to Joel Embiid, mid-range jumper, game on the line, would I take it? Every single time. Every single time. Let me ask you this. And I think I might know the answer just because we have hindsight. But if Joel Embiid, if you had two options, that shot out of Joel or the double team comes and he kicks it out to Danny Green. Danny Green has 3,000 feet of wide open space and he bricks the shot. Would you yell at Joel Embiid for not taking it? I feel like the mindset on what happened would be, come on, you got to live and die with your superstar. You have to make sure that your best player gets the last shot opportunity to help you win the game. You live and die with your best player. So I feel like that would have been the reaction if Joel passed that shot up, and even if it was a wide open look and it was missed, the reaction would have been, I'd rather have Joel Embiid take it. Now, I think we have hindsight, so maybe the answer would be no, just because you know what happened. But I really do believe that's the case. If you didn't know what would have went down, I truthfully do think that would have been how people reacted.
What's up, man? That was a disappointing ass loss, 112-109 to the freaking Cleveland Cavaliers, who had 9 players playing tonight. I only knew like 2 or 3 of their names. It was just a bad loss tonight by the Sixers. Embiid was good he was good again, 42 points. He made like 90% of his free throws. Ben Simmons, he had a good game defensively and offensively, in my opinion. Tobias Harris was not there. Obviously, he's injured. That was a big part of the loss, in my opinion. But the bench is just trash. But Ben Simmons splashed a 3.
Yeah, Ben Simmons splashing the 3 does nothing for me, and I thought he had moments. That third quarter was very good for Ben Simmons, and he was determined. But where did the determination go? And defensively, I don't know if I can give him that much praise, personally, for that effort against the Cavs. I've seen him be way better, and that's a will thing. If that was Luka Doncic, you would have had a better effort defensively. I thought he took some tough angles. I thought he got beat where he normally doesn't get beat. And look, I understand. I am fully aware with how great Ben is, his flaw defensively is a De'Aaron Fox, a Colin Sexton, some of these guards that have this quicker skill set to them. So you're 6'10". You have a big body frame, and that's why these smaller guards, I should say, when they have a big man on them, they laugh. They crack up because they know that they're quicker, faster, and they have speed, and they can beat right around them. So Ben does have a flaw in his defensive game, but there is something to be said about him not giving it his 100% all either. Ben will get beat by quicker guards, but he's also better than what he gave you against some of these quicker guards at the same time. I didn't love Ben's D, and a lot of that had to do with I didn't love the way he handled the rock. 7 turnovers, you're putting your team in a brutal position. You're the primary ball handler. 7 turnovers, you're going to lose that game majority of the time. So you got to be more efficient with the ball. You got to be smarter. You got to make better decisions.
Hey, Brodes. I feel like Danny Green is what Furkan is to you. I can't stand him. He's such a streaky shooter, but it's the lack of veteran presence. Committing late game fouls, turnovers, not getting ready for the handoffs. This is just getting on my nerves. This is a game I will quickly forget.
You and majority of the other Sixers fans will quickly forget. To say Danny Green is a streaky shooter, though, it kind of bothers me. Only because 99.9% of shooters in the NBA are streaky, right? So that's where I'm kind of having the problem here. That's how this sport is played. If your skill set is shooting, there's going to be ups and downs in your season. So, but I do agree with you that, look, I don't hate Danny Green as much as the others, only because I know the context behind it. And I know others know it, but they don't apply it. You gave up Al Horford for Danny Green. You could do way worse than that trade. You got rid of the contract that everybody said was unmovable, and you get Danny Green. It's not the best in the world, but it's not the worst you could have gotten, and you got to deal with it for one season. But there is this veteran presence feel to him that we all loved and we totally reacted to in a responsible way, I should say, in the beginning of the season. And now it's almost as if he's the one making boneheaded plays out there. And I'm not talking about missing shots. That isn't what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about just missing shots, but whether it's a turnover late, he's at the half-court line, he's trying to make a cross-court pass that gets picked off, and it gets a little murky, and it gets irky. What are you doing? Why are you doing that? Or if it's a bad foul, why are you fouling in that situation with the time left on the game and with what the score is? Why are you fouling right there? Don't bitch and complain that shouldn't have been a call. No. Watch the replay. That should have been a foul. That is an issue. So I agree with you that there are some problems with what he's doing out there from almost like a rookie move standpoint, which upsets me. If you are going to miss your shots, I'm okay with it because I understand that's where you are in your career. But then at least do the intangibles and the little things that you are known to do, and you're not executing on that side. I think there's a lot to be said about locker room stuff. And I think he does bring that. There's no doubt, actually. It's not I think. I know. I know Danny Green has a lot to say in the locker room. But he's also got to bring it on the court, too. And I think he is lacking some IQ plays. And that's what you're supposed to do when you're a savvy veteran, when you're a championship caliber player. You know the ins and outs and the IQ of the game. And right now, he's lacking it big time.
Hey, Brodes. The Sixers game is most likely over. It's basically over. But, oh my God, you just lost to the second worst team in the Eastern Conference. Like, why? This makes no sense.
I'll tell you why. Turnovers. Not playing defense. I think they overlooked their opponent. They went in and did exactly what you just mentioned. Second worst team. They're bad. Who's gonna beat us on that team? That's exactly what they thought internally as they ran out there on the floor. First off, we're at home. We don't lose at home. And second off, we're playing a team that stinks. Now, they should have looked in the mirror and recognized that they lost to this team before because they didn't bring the energy, because they didn't feel like hustling, and because they got outworked by their opponent. And that was this year. It's not as if this was last season and they had to look back to a year or two ago. No, this is a problem that happened earlier this season. So for them to not be fully aware, like, that's a problem. You got to recognize you got to go out there and play as hard as you can. You can't dig yourself into a hole. And they thought even if they did dig themselves into the hole, that they would be fine because they had more talent. And on that given night, while they did come back, the better team won. So how did they lose this game? They didn't feel like competing. They got outworked. Players missed wide open shots. That's arguably Seth Curry's worst game he's ever had, taking that many shots. Transition defense, putrid. Late game execution, bad. Joel could have won the game. Bad might be strong. But late game execution, overtime, when I said late game execution, I just meant specifically that one play because Embiid could have won the game and he missed it. Not that this game falls on his shoulders by any means, but even when you start the overtime period, what ends up happening? Turnover. You have 3 turnovers and 3 possessions there while you have Colin Sexton, Garland, making plays and scoring buckets. Well, guess who's going to come out victorious? Yeah, the team that's executing and making buckets. So it's crazy, but they do have a chance to respond. That they do against the Indiana Pacers. If they beat the Pacers, do we even have this discussion? Are we even worried about it? Are we worried about this loss against Colin Sexton? Probably not. But I will tell you what will continue to loom in my mind and in my brain. Exactly what I read to you that Rich Hoffman put out there on The Athletic about where this team is from a three-point shooting perspective, from a half-court set perspective. Because those two things, guess what? That's how you win in the playoffs. So if you're not going to be able to do those two things, good luck in the playoffs. Good luck in the playoffs. So that concerns me. No matter if they beat the Pacers, lose to the Cavs, beat the Lakers, beat the Celtics, lose to the Memphis Grizzlies, whatever. Those two numbers have to improve. And if they don't, I think you're doomed. So with that being said, I do need to let you know about my other friends over at Orbit Energy and Power. With over 20 years of experience in the solar industry, they are home to your solar experts in residential and commercial projects. Their solar program eliminates your electric bill completely by offering flexible financing solutions such as $0 down. In addition, they make sure that you receive all the state and federal incentives available when switching to solar. There's no risk and no need for investment. They also provide water purification systems, backup energy services, battery storage, and more. So check out their information. It is all down below. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.